Originally, we were planning to have a press conference that includes the 4 presidents, the leadership of the 4 unions within the Rochester City School District. And we also scheduled a meeting prior to this conference with the superintendent as a courtesy so that he know what proposals we are making to build on what he has already done and the district has already done to address the continuing need for improving safety and security on school district premises, especially parking lots. This was never an us versus them. We are thoroughly convinced that the superintendent wants what our members want, and that is to feel safe coming and leaving schools, and that their property, including their automobiles, are safe. We believe that we are grateful for what has already been done, extending of the hours of SSOs at arrival and dismissal, the police squads that the superintendent has already engaged for targeted attention to areas that experience crime, the involvement of his and the mayor's efforts to successfully involve state police in helping the local authorities. And even if you drive by Franklin High School, you will see those concrete barriers to prevent the kind of dangerous joyrides that occurred recently. So we went over with the superintendent of with every one of the items listed as our proposals, I think 8 or 10 of them, and we had a very productive meeting, and we invited him to join us here. We believe that while more work needs to be done and more discussions need to be had, we can get on the same page on every single one of those interests that our members have. So I would like to suggest that my colleagues, the leaders of the other 3 unions, say a few words, and then to begin with comments from the superintendent and open it up for questions. So why don't we begin with Angie?
So, you know, it's very hard for our members, our staff, to come to work every day.
Actually, what you're saying is very important. Can we move the mics over there?
Oh, or our sweet seats. How about if I do this?
There you go.
Whoever's speaking, I will yield
in
mine.
front of the mics. Yeah, that would help us out. Thank you.
So I'm Angie Rivera. I am representing the paraprofessionals and teaching assistant in the district. So I am so happy about this resolution to address the issues about safety in the parking lot, safety even in the resolution about in the classroom, and you know, things that we are in collaboration with the superintendent and the mayor, we are trying to accomplish. It's very hard for our members to come to work every day and be worried about you know, when you come back, the cars are stolen, broken in, they have to miss work, they have to, you know, to deal with insurance. So I am so happy that we're moving forward, and the best way to for us to do this was this resolution. So it's great to be here. It was a great meeting with the superintendent and the mayor, and we appreciate that, and hopefully we can move this forward and do better for our students, because when our staff is worried and concerned and they are dealing with situations like stealing the cars, breaking in, the students cannot learn because we are stressed out and we are not in our best, you know, position to teach. Thank you.
John?
John Rowe. I am president of ASAR, which is the bargaining unit for the administrators. Like Angie was just saying, and Adam, prior to that, we are concerned about safety in our schools. We are in unprecedented times over the last year or two, since the post-COVID times. Some of the issues that our building administrators and our teachers are dealing with now are different than they were pre-COVID. So definitely just responding to these different the resources and just trying to understand and deal with some of these situations, not always easy. We did meet with the superintendent, the mayor, the deputy police chief about a month ago, and I think the way it sounds to me, at least from my perspective, we are all on the same page. We're all trying to get to we all have a common goal. We want to see things get back to the way they were. We just know it's going to take time to get there. It's not going to happen overnight. This is not a short-term, there aren't any short-term solutions here. A lot of these are long-term solutions. But safety in the school, safety at central office, safety amongst our members, teachers, everyone, it's really important to us. So, thank you.
Angelo Palmerini, Vice President of Bente, non-teaching employees. These joint resolutions that we are bringing forward is a step to resolving some of these issues that we are seeing in regards to the safety of our members, along with the students, their families, and the community that visit our facilities on a daily basis. Hopefully we will, some of these things are in process of getting resolved, and hopefully it will be a quick process. This way the safety of everyone will be back to normal. Thank you.
Dr. Cruz?
Do I have to move, or am I
Carmen,
good here?
yeah.
I'm good, thank you.
I think you'll be close. Are you close enough? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. So, obviously, safety of our staff and our students is the number one importance, right, and of paramount importance here for us in the district. And we've done and we've responded to some of the things that we've been facing this year. When the Franklin incident came onto our campus, we immediately added RPD presence at multiple buildings. We have 5 cars that circulate the area. We've added SSOs for an extended day for an additional hour so that teachers and staff have someone to walk to the car with if necessary. Right now at Franklin, we're doing some additional fortifying the grounds to make sure that nobody can get access and drive on the barriers of the campus. So we're responding in every which way we can. I'm looking at additional safety and security measures that we could do. We've added upgrades to cameras already. We're trying to get a higher quality imaging, doing all the things that we believe are necessary. This is not an easy problem. This isn't like the unions have mentioned, right? This is something that we have to address collectively as a city. I've been meeting with the mayor on a regular basis, talking with the mayor on a regular basis about what can be done, and he's responded with providing additional supports at dismissals for Franklin with additional RPD. We have RPD there already, but there's more of a presence there locally as well. So we'll continue to work to make sure that our staff and students arrive and leave school in a way that's safe and that they're not at risk of harm. Our community needs to be very clear. This behavior on our campus cannot be acceptable. Right? This cannot be behavior that is okay. Putting our staff and students at risk, those are our most valuable people in this community. They need to be taken care of at the utmost importance. So we believe that we'll continue to do what we have to make sure that our community, our staff, and our students remain safe coming and leaving school.
Thank you. And now it's your time. Any question?
Sir, you said you're considering additional safety protocols. Could you expand on that?
So
sorry if I missed it.
there's things that I'd rather not share publicly. Obviously, we have to respond to situations, and sharing everything that we are going to do puts a little bit makes us a little bit more vulnerable. So there are things that we're doing in terms of fortifying the areas of the school, upgrading technology, making sure that we have presence around. So there's things that we're doing that are logical, but there are other things that, I'd rather keep secure.
So let me just add to that. We agree. A lot of these proposals that we're making are really concrete, specific, pragmatic, commonsensical things. Like if you had this kind of a problem near your home, you would want better lighting, you would want maybe some surveillance cameras, you would want attention from the authorities, from law enforcement and so forth. But there are also deeper problems here that are not immediately resolvable. For example, convincing our children that there are consequences for criminal behavior. I don't mean punishing our children, I mean like convincing them that there are consequences. And so we are recommending that the district review their code of conduct for children to incorporate that part. We're not talking that we don't want to criminalize children, but we also don't want to decriminalize criminal behavior. We want them to learn at school, while they're at school, what will be acceptable after they leave our schools in society. And the other thing is, of course, the kind of investment that needs to be made in children's well-being, emotional, mental and physical well-being. And Dr. Peluso has already led the way in adding additional counselors and additional social services, and is committed to continuing to do that, because children came back to us after COVID even more traumatized probably than the adults were, and the adults were pretty traumatized by COVID. So we're looking how to help our children, not to how to punish our children, but we also don't want to miseducate them to believe that schools are havens for criminal behavior. I think we all agree on that, and we have to do it in a balanced way that makes sense to families and to parents.
With that, and also apologies for kind of delay getting here, I mean, it's fine. I understand that there's been these campaigns for reducing the number of suspensions, or what that looks like, outside suspensions versus in school. When you talk about these consequences, could you share a bit more?
Yeah, the Solutions Not Suspensions campaign is, I would be comfortable with that mantra. They're not very clear about what the solutions are. They're a little thin on the solutions. I think the solutions is additional social and emotional supports for children and alternative settings that would be a good match with what they need but are not getting in the regular environment. And that is something that we're recommending, and Dr. Peluso actually is making plans for that. I'll let him speak for himself on that issue for our redesigned future school year.
So, thank you. So yeah, we're looking at how we could provide alternative supports to kids outside of the instructional day if there's some behaviors that are prohibiting them that, right? Sending them and long-term suspending students and then giving them a couple of hours of tutoring or a few hours of tutoring every single day doesn't help resolve some of the issues that they're having. So looking at some social emotional support, we've added counselors, we've added social work, we're adding more sort of restorative practice teams. So looking at those wraparound supports, we're looking at extensively investing in a telehealth, telemedicine in all of our schools, which will also include social, emotional, and behavioral supports from real-time in-school support. So this isn't, once again, just about the consequence for the behavior. It's also the support that we get in terms of making sure that kids are ready to return when they do return.
So do you, sorry, you guys already have these type of programs put in place to address these issues, and if not, do you ever think that you need these programs, or is more assistance that you're saying?
So what we're starting to see now in terms of some of what behaviorally we're seeing, I think right now what my concern is making sure our campuses are safe, right? What we're seeing on our campuses is not something that I would say historically we've seen in the past, right? You don't see cars being stolen this frequently. You don't see cars being broken into this frequently. Not to say that they didn't happen, but at the level of what we're seeing now is extremely high frequency. Those are things that, you know, I don't think we ever could have prepared for, and I would say that, you know, people are going to tie it to the TikTok challenge that came out, right? And we're starting to see that here we seem to be very vulnerable for that. You know, those are things that unfortunately now as superintendent I have to prepare and think in terms of resolving it. You know, once again, I go back to that sense of school was a sense of community, was always a place that was pretty much off limits for these type of behaviors, and they're not off limits anymore as we're seeing, and we need to respond just to make sure that our campuses are safe.
Dr. Bluzar, earlier we were talking about Franklin and putting up physical barriers. We understand that also something happened at school number 2, where almost the same situation. It wasn't on social media, but you know, there was a car driving around on a campus. Are you guys planning to do that to all the schools, or is it just Franklin?
Yeah, very good question. So we're looking at where we're seeing an increased propensity of these types of activities, and then we will respond and put them. Yes, it's not, we're not only responding right now with those barriers at Franklin. We're working with the city to identify areas all over where their data showing them they're getting calls from as well. So, you know, you're starting to see, drive around on a Friday night, a Saturday night, a Tuesday, you see cars, kind of mopeds, you know, four-wheelers are kind of taking, you know, driving on the streets, driving on the sidewalks. We're just protecting our campuses where we're seeing those increases to make sure that they don't have access to our dismissal and arrival times.
So with all of these extra precautions and the investments you previously said that you're making investments for these precautions and everything, and even with barriers, what does the cost look like for all of this? And you're working with the city and everything, so what kind of costs are we looking for?
So right now, you know, we are working with the city to, with the barriers, to kind of absorb some of those costs. I don't have an exact number in terms of what these actual barriers are costing. You know, I'm looking at we have a healthy fund balance right now to look at if there's money that I could take from our fund balance. A lot of the projects that we do are actually state aid reimbursable, so we would go through a state aid design as well. So any cost that we do in terms of what our facilities looks like, permanent structures would be reimbursable. So we're looking at a whole collective plan, and then we'd bring that forth to the board for a resolution.
Where would that money be coming from?
So we have a healthy fund balance right now. We have a healthy fund balance in our bank right now. We're able to kind of take some funds out of that, and then for state ed reimbursement, we would then apply for state aid reimbursement on that money if I had to.
So when you talk about like withholding or putting away a certain amount, was it $5 million or something specifically for emergency?
That's for the
funds?
23-24 budget. That's for when we're planning for next year's 23-24 year budget cycle. I have a $5 million reserve where I could use for non-reoccurring emergency expenses, so that if something was to happen, I could go to the board and ask for the release of those funds for these situations. That is more of a fiscal practice, just so that we're not investing fund balance in people. That becomes a reoccurring offense that puts us at future risk budget-wise.
Okay, I guess my question there is what the funding for these measures may look like for the future school year.
So that way, we will look at what the continued cost is. Right now, I'm looking at structural costs that would be one-time, non-reoccurring expenses for this year. Anything that would be people-wise would be a further expense that would be reoccurring type of expenses.
But it sounds like with safety and security that there would be some expenses that would not necessarily be reoccurring.
There'd be they're more facilities design type of program.
Okay.
Any type of additional teaching of your security people? I mean, as things change, are you adding any kind of levels of how our security folk need to be prepared for these things?
So, yeah, so we're, just recently we're having our principals meet with their zone captains on a more regular basis so that they could get the necessary intel. We also have, with our Director of Safety and Security, in constant contact daily with RPD and what is happening in the community, so that information could then be shared down with our principals and then with our safety and security staff in the buildings.
What is the process like now that these recommendations have been presented? What's the next steps in whether they'll be adopted or anything like that?
So, some of these are already being, we've gotten movement on some of these already. We'll continue to have conversations with the board, and I'll have kind of a conversation with my board around this. And the board is very clear that they are concerned and want to make sure that they're, that we're doing everything we can for the safety and security of our staff and students. So, I will bring this forth to the board. And some of these will, like Dr. Urbanski said, take a little bit further discussion than others, but, I think some of these would be, definitively some things we can move on pretty quickly.
And in terms of the specifics, as far as staff and teachers, being affected with the parking lot concerns, with the car tie-in specifically, is there a general, I guess, number of how many, employees have been impacted, in that capacity? I mean, is it 2 or 3, or is it, more than a dozen?
For the number of cars?
Yeah.
We have some data on that because we actually surveyed all our schools. And I would say that that number by now, correct me if I'm wrong,
75.
about 170.
No, 75.
75.
Yeah, that we've heard of.
District-wide.
That we know of.
Yeah.
75.
75, but this comes in spurts also. For example, the day before the spring break, at one school parking lot, at school number 33 on Webster Avenue, there were like more than a dozen that were damaged, vandalized. One was stolen, actually. But what we don't have statistics on is the even more frequent occurrence of confrontations in a parking lot or on a premises, the fear that this installs in those who are not directly impacted. For example, we have members, and I'm sure other unions do as well, who no longer drive to work, but their spouses drive them to work because they don't want to be exposed repetitively to either car theft or damage or confrontations walking from the parking lot to the building. Despite the increase in the time that the superintendent arranged for and has been paying for right from the start of an hour at arrival and an hour at dismissal. This is not a healthy atmosphere. And what our members want to know is that there is hope that this will change. They want to know that before they make a final determination where they will work and which district they will teach in. And I think that one of the most hopeful things that we can say now is that with Dr. Pelusa as superintendent, we are convinced that we all want the same thing. And working together makes that hope more likely to become a reality than if we were blaming each other or arguing about it. And so I am hopeful that together, not just us, but with the city, because this is a citywide issue, we will be able to make it less likely for these crimes to occur.
Have you guys seen any patterns of employees leaving the district because of this problem?
Sorry, what is the question?
Have you guys seen any patterns of employees leaving the district because of
Yes,
this problem?
we've had actually an increase. Okay, let me give you numbers. Last year, 135 teachers resigned during the school year, not because of retirements, that's in addition to retirements, they just quit in the middle of the school year, 135. That was a record until last year. This year, we've exceeded that number. We're about 160. The district's figures and ours differ by slightly, not by a lot. But let's say it's exceeded the number, and the main reason these teachers tell us that they're leaving is security. It's not the only reason, but it is the reason. When you combine that with the reality that it's hard to hire new people, and now you've got an increase in people leaving, that gives you another compelling reason to work together to resolve this this problem.
Couple quick fire questions. You said that you want to increase positions in terms of counselors, in terms of staff for security.
I said we have increased, yep.
How many?
I think last year we added, I have to go back, almost 30 counselors last year. This year, we're adding several rock restorative, a few more social workers as well. I think counselors are remaining flat from what we added last year.
How many positions are you looking to fill at the moment?
I have to go back and look at my vacancy as of today, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know I don't have a number right now.
And then a clarification on when you say protected barriers around, for instance, Franklin, what does that look like?
So I don't know if you've seen in some of those, some of our prior work and prior buildings, they're just concrete, like little barriers that you could walk through, and it just prevents people from being able to access or drive up on the campus.
Okay.
So that is something you are looking into?
So there are already some on Franklin campus already we've added, and we're looking at other campuses and working with the city to strategically place them in spots where we're seeing increased traffic activity from potentially stolen vehicles.
So at Franklin, it's already secured in that way, and other campuses you're looking to?
We're adding them as of right the next day after what had happened at Franklin. We began adding and strategizing where to put them. We have to get access to them. They're not. We don't have thousands of them. The city doesn't have thousands of them sitting around. So we're working with the city to kind of figure out where to put them and how to strategically get more.
So you're thinking more would be going on Franklin, around Franklin? More barriers?
Yeah, we're going to figure out a way to strategically protect Franklin. It may not all be barriers.
And separate from the RPD on campus at certain times, have you talked to Chief Smith about maybe getting a few more patrols going throughout the day?
So the mayor's been extremely responsive in that situation. If you watch Franklin, we do have a police officer there for a majority of the day. And as of the situation that happened with the cars, there's been state police presence, more car presence. There's been an increased level of safety from the mayor and the city, and his response has been pretty dramatic in that area.
And a clarifying question, Mr. Urbanski, you mentioned 75 incidents in parking lots. Can you just clarify exactly what kind of incidents those were?
The 75 who were...
There were break-ins, thefts on campus for our members. That's just the 75 is just from the teacher unit.
75 that we know of where there's been windows broken, breaking into the car theft, and a few were carjackings, but that's not the largest number. The largest number is vandalism of the cars, and then theft of the cars, and then carjacking.
And those are all within the 75?
75 who were notified this school year, is that correct?
Yeah, and most of those were from January on. We're still getting ones that happened for this school year.
And by the way, with the warmer weather, I think eventually it's going to get warmer in Rochester, you're never sure. With the warmer weather, the pattern has been that there's been an increase in the number of temptations and incidents. So getting the word out to children and to young people that school premises and parking lots are not where they should choose to engage in this behavior is very important before the spring is in full bloom.
You mentioned that there's been an increase in counselors being hired and added to the district. Because of that, have you previously, and because of all the safety issues, have you seen an increase in mental health issues among children and staff? And that's one of the bigger reasons for the increase in counselors?
Yeah, I think after COVID came back, we've recognized what has the mental health and mental support needs of our students, staff, community, right? We're seeing that trauma. And I want to be clear, like what we're facing is no different than a lot of our community, a lot of the nation's facing as well. Everything from the increased trauma to the increased, theft and violence within the city, especially in our urban, increased resignations, and so we're seeing this across the country. Right now, what we're trying to do is figure out how to make sure that Rochester is a safe place for our staff and our students as they arrive and leave school.
the mayor, the police chief are suing Kia and Hyundai, amid all these recent thefts of recent, teenagers? Any comment or response?
For me, I think it's a great first step by the mayor. But
Quick question regarding just the enhancements for security measures and the addition of New York State Police now being present at arrival dismissal. I recall back in January when the original incident happened at Franklin, there was that conversation about whether or not to bring back SROs, and I believe there was the comment of perhaps this would look differently, not somebody in uniform. Has that come up at all in terms of reincorporating that or revisiting that in any capacity?
So the response to after Franklin was to make sure that we had 5 police officers that I'm paying for about 8 hours a day to premise and keep our parking lot and schools safe, right, for arrival and dismissal. The school resource officer is a larger conversation that we'd have to have with the board and the community about if that's something they wanted to pursue. I think right now, the board and myself are focused on making sure that our exterior of the campuses are safe, and then what other ways that we could do internally beyond the police to support our students and staff.
Question for Vince. Can you just go into depth on, is there a specific story, just an example you can give, if we can't hear from a teacher today, on just what you've heard? Like, whether it's in the parking lot at night, or, are they scared to speak out, they've been targeted, like, what are they experiencing, I guess, where they might have felt in danger?
Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge that in some of our schools, there is greater concern than in other schools. At the schools where there is greater concern, or coupled with incidents that are either intimidation, harassment, confrontations, or damage or assaults, teachers are indeed responding by behaving differently. They enter and leave not alone. Some with a companion, and others in small groups, and they plan it that way. Secondly, they avoid staying as late as they otherwise would, because their work doesn't end when the children leave. Especially at elementary schools, there's a lot of cleanup, if you will, and preparation and digesting what happened, and so they try to do that all before it becomes less safe to exit the school. As I mentioned, some are getting rides from spouses and others, or carpooling. And some, I think the most frequent change in behavior, that some are hurrying into the building, hurrying from school into their cars, keeping their fingers crossed, locking the doors as soon as they enter, backing their cars into the parking space so that they could leave more readily. They shouldn't have to scurry like that. This is not healthy. Our teachers do not fear our students. Our teachers fear for our students, because they know that the overwhelming majority of children are not involved in this behavior. The most majority of young people are not, but there is a small minority of individuals who repetitively commit these criminal acts because they believe that there are no consequences for it. The worst thing that they believe can happen is that you get an appearance ticket, and when I asked the police what happens if they don't appear, the answer was they get another appearance ticket. So we're unintentionally sending the wrong message to children that there are no consequences for their behavior. I know Dr. Peluso agrees with us that we must send a correct message, and we actually agreed to continue to working jointly to figure out how to do that in a way that is healthiest for our students.
Has the district thought about incorporating, I guess, any reimbursement or hazard pay to employees just in case this did happen to them?
So yeah, we've had some conversations around how we could help the unit. I've approved hardship days for staff if they need to take time off to get to a car, fix a car. And we've had some conversations around what does it look like for insurance and, reviewing if that's a possibility as well.
See, it's the least that an employer can do is not to shift the cost of this kind of cost on the employee. So whatever insurance covers, fine, but whatever insurance doesn't cover, we're having those discussions. They're not concluded, but I think the intent is to be helpful to employees, both with time and reimbursement for damages caused not by their recklessness, but by criminal behavior related to the job.
I'm seeing some increased funding, I think, for after school, and I understand that after school can also be a way to address social emotional learning. I'm curious where things stand with that, and given that that's increased hours at a school, security measures are also being considered for good-standing activities like that.
Yeah, if we have after-school events or after-school activities, we'd have to make sure that there, we have the security personnel we do for games, we do for, concerts, we have those events. So we want to, school connectedness, school engagement is the biggest way to kind of, to get the community behind the school. So we want to increase those opportunities as well as provide those supports as well. So if you look at our concerts, you look at our school events for games, there's always additional personnel there for safety.
I guess I'm asking more about after-school activities. There's increased funding for that specifically in the upcoming school year, and if that's also a way that you're all looking to address social emotional learning.
After school, yes, so school connectedness, go back to my point about school connectedness. School connectedness is obviously in part to raise social emotional learning. So when a student feels like, just that connected to their school, right? They feel they're a part of the school, they're part of the school community, they're not just coming in for the start of the day and leaving the start of the day, they're participating in some activities, clubs, enrichment, right? They have a connection to that school.
I'm sorry, just so I have the understanding, back to the funding of, you mentioned that staff will be getting, what was it you said, hardship pay? And so back to the funding, will that be coming from the same funding that you mentioned before with all the other safety precautions as well?
So we have built-in funding for days in situations like this. So we have hardship days already that we approve. What I've made a agreement to that if a staff member can't get to a car dealer during, outside, that they have to take time off of work to do that for a situation that's happened, that they won't have to use their personal time in order to do that we would be able to incur that. So that's been my commitment on this right now. And we have built-in days for it.
And John?
I just want to say, we met prior to this, and so it was just going to be actually the four of us. It was going to be RAP, Bente, RTA, and ASAR. And so we met with Carmine prior to, but just to have Carmine out here with us to show that we are all together, because it's been years that you probably have seen 4 bargaining units and the superintendent together up here trying to have one vision moving forward. So, like I said, I think we're all on the same page in this, and we want to really try and figure out a solution to a lot of these different things that are happening in the community.
And the proof of that is, and I'll leave it here in case you're interested, on October 15th of 2021, we made similar proposals to the prior superintendent and heard nothing back to this day. So the fact that Dr. Peluso has taken this seriously right from the start and is working with us on it increases the chances that things will change and will improve for our students and our staff.
How important was it for you to connect with these guys and make sure, everybody's on the same page?
So I've been in constant contact, right? When something happens, we have to have a conversation, right? And, I think, and I'm hoping that when situations have come about, that my response in each of those situations has shown all the bargaining units and my staff and our community here that I take it seriously and that I'm going to do something about it. So, you know, if it's Franklin and the the immediate police officers, if it's when someone was carjacked, the additional safety and security to walk people to schools, and what happened at Franklin, the barriers that are going up now, right? There's going to be responses, and this will help in some of these agreements right now to kind of prevent some things, right? But something's, you know, going to happen. Kids will do some things will change. It's just that they know that I'm going to respond and support our units and our staff and all of them to make sure that we have a place here where our staff know they can come to work and not have to worry about what they have to worry about. Now, and I'm going to leave with this, right? We've given them some ideas of, you know, how they could also take some self-advocacy in these situations, and that needs to happen now when you're pumping gas, going to any store, going to the mall, right? All of those precautions need to be taken, because as much as it's happening in schools, this is happening pretty much anywhere. So.
Just make sure that I have my notes right. Oh wait, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah.
Just closing comment for me. You know, with this collaborative effort between us and Dr. Paluzzo and the other bargaining units, and some of these things that are being taken place today, it is a very positive step forward in trying to resolve these safety and security issues at the buildings.
So just to clarify, make sure I have my notes right, particular target schools or zip codes or neighborhoods for increased security measures?
Yes.
Which
ones?
Yeah.
I'd rather, you know,
That's what
yes.
you're saying, like you don't
Yep.
want to get
Yeah.
into that. And then with those 75 incidents, were those kind of happening repeatedly at any locations?
Are they concentrated in any location? Matt?
There are certain schools, it happens at certain schools more than others.
So, School 33 has been, School 25 and Montessori, which is now on
Side.
we used to be Freddie Thomas campus, has been
Number 2 school?
number 2 school.
Like 4, 3, that whole neighborhood, you know, those three are pretty close together.
And those are just teachers.
Yeah, and by the way, the number we gave you is just for our members, the teacher unit. This is happening to all in all areas of employment, not just teachers. So if you included the numbers of non-teaching employees and paraprofessionals and administrators, by the way, administrators are very vulnerable because they do come in a lot earlier and leave a lot later than everybody else. I think the numbers would be substantially higher.
And you said those numbers don't include incidents of like menacing or things like that?
They only include teachers. They don't include any of the other district.
Break-ins and.
Oh, they do include break-ins and car thefts and a few carjackings.
But other sort of incidents you
Other
alluded to?
confrontations and no. Thank you all very much. Carmen, thank you so much.